See how they work? See, I mean, just everything's a lie. Oh, Ventura claims the Gulf of Tonkin was staged. No, Ventura doesn't claim that. What next are you going to say? That's a lie? Well, you did, basically. Perhaps what Ventura is missing is there is probably more incontrovertible evidence and more witnesses who have already established what happened on September 11th than most major historical events. Oh, so he says we have the majority of paid-off media that agrees with us. To dispute the conventional historical account is intellectually dishonest and nonsensical. So he's saying Ventura's dishonest. This guy just implied Gulf of Tonkin wasn't staged. We'll be right back. We don't need any thought control, no dark sarcasm in the classroom. We don't need no thought control. So Jeffrey Scott Shapiro continues. Then I'm going to get into all the evidence. The most important info is coming up. He says that you cannot dispute the historical account. It is intellectually dishonest and nonsensical. And then his proof that it's dishonest is to confirm what we saw on television and heard on the radio and what the police were told. We're not saying the police were involved. They were told, oh, we're going to blow it up. We're going to blow up Building 7. And then they deny they ever said this when it's on record. That's coming up. He says, I know this because I was working as a journalist for Garnet News at Ground Zero that day, and I remember very clearly what I saw and heard. And then what he saw and heard confirms what we're saying, but they turn it around. By the way, I've confirmed from the transcript that 2 days ago, Limbaugh basically covered our, and he's covered our PrisonPlanet.com articles before with credit. He didn't give credit, where we pointed out that they've killed the number 1 and 2 guys in Al-Qaeda 5 times each and never retracted the last time they supposedly killed them in Iraq. And Limbaugh just said, folks, the media is lying to you. Why are they saying they've killed certain leaders, in one case 14 times, and then never retract the last time they said they killed them? They do that to just practice the lie, just test the media, just train. It's kind of like Fox News said Monday, Osama bin Laden had a Facebook account. And then the next line said, or someone posing as him. And then they admitted it wasn't him. They knew it wasn't him. They usually say, oh, Osama admits he did 9/11. Look, it was in an email. Oh, look, there's an audio tape, but it turns out it's fake. They do voice print, it's not him. They just lie. So here's this guy's evidence that we're making it up that they blew up Building 7. And his evidence is they had a big discussion in front of him about blowing it up. That's like saying, oh, you're discredited. No one saw men at the grassy knoll shooting at Kennedy. There were only 50 plus of them that said it. You got all the witnesses going, yeah, there were men right there. The motorcycle cop, everybody said, yeah, till they were told to shut up. And then, our proof is that we saw. I mean, he's basically saying, I saw the man at the grassy knoll shoot too. That disproves it. I mean, this is the equivalent. He says, although I arrived at Ground Zero shortly after the Twin Towers fell, I was in the danger zone created by Building 7. Oh, he was in danger. See, from the moment it collapsed in the afternoon, and the event is one of the key cornerstones of the 9/11 conspiracy theory. Governor Ventura and many 9/11 truthers allege that government explosives caused the afternoon collapse of Building 7. This is false. Oh, he just says so. I know this because I remember watching all 47 stories of Building 7 suddenly and silently crumble before my eyes. We've got all the police tapes, videos. You can hear. And in fact, I want Watson, he only put 2 videos of that up. I want to add, there's a bunch of audio tapes off the police radios and CBS radio and others where people were saying boom, boom. And I've interviewed the witnesses. They were like, boom, 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 boom. But these camera views are about 400 yards back, and you hear them. And then it's amazing. But he says it was silent. Building 7 silently fell. It was silent. He says, this is false. I know this because I remember watching all 47 stories of Building 7 suddenly and silently crumble before my eyes. Talk about somebody who's delusional. Shortly before the building collapsed, several NYPD officers and Con Edison, that's the power company, workers told me that Larry Silverstein, the property developer of One World Financial Center, was on the phone with his insurance carrier to see if they could authorize the controlled demolition of the building since its foundation was already unstable and expected to fall. So there's the lie. No modern steel building fallen from fire. 3 do it that day. Building 7 not hit by an aircraft. So he just weaves disinfo in together here and just calmly slips in Silverstein's on the phone as if they could go into a supposedly, terminal building and wire it. And then we have Silverstein separately saying, we went in and wired it and blew it up and gave the order and watched it come down. And then he said, well, that's not what I meant by that. But here's another witness saying, oh, I talked to cops and the power company that was based right there and everybody about bringing it down. That's how he discredits us, saying they were talking about blowing it up and clearly did, is admitting it. A controlled demolition would have minimized the damage caused by the building's imminent collapse, which it fell perfectly in its own footprint, a beautiful controlled demolition, and potentially save lives. So the same Silverstein line. Why he says he did pull it. Many law enforcement personnel, firefighters, and other journalists were aware of this possible option. Well, yeah, it was on the news, but then you said we never heard that. There was no secret. There was no conspiracy because it was right out in the open. But how do you wire a building? And then why do you now lie and say it wasn't wired? Why does Silverstein do that? We'll come back, finish up with this, then get into our key article. Bombshell, Silverstein wanted to demolish building on 9/11. Stay with us. So, you look at this PSYOP piece by Fox News, and they say there's no secret. The power company, the police knew that it was being discussed whether we should have a controlled demolition of Building 7. But it fell perfectly in its own footprint, so we didn't need to. Not hit by an aircraft, small fires in it. And for pointing out the obvious, he calls Jesse Ventura a intellectual fraud, a intellectually dishonest person. No, you're intellectually dishonest, Jeffrey Scott Shapiro. And if you're a useful idiot, you're one of the most gullible, self-deluded people that I've ever run into. And so you've got all these top police and firemen and military and FBI there, and they blow up Building 7, and Silverstein comes out and says they pulled it, and then later they say, no, we never pulled it. That's a conspiracy theory. And then now they're saying, how dare you ever question it when they admit it was being discussed whether or not to pull it. I mean, do you understand how fundamental this is? Now, I want to play some video clips, but first, I'm going to read here on air Paul Joseph Watson's article that we wrote together. Bombshell, Silverstein wanted to demolish Building 7 on 9/11. And the bombshell is, here's another witness, a senior Fox News contributor and reporter who was there that day, working for another media outlet, confirming what we all heard and saw on TV. And then don't forget, 1 hour before, CNN and BBC, they've now admitted, they wouldn't for 3 years admit, I predicted it correctly because I looked at who feeds them, Reuters, was told Building 7 had fallen in its own footprint from natural causes. This is put out at the time that Silverstein's running around telling the police, we can wire that up in 5 minutes. You know, I mean, they wire buildings sometimes for a month, and a good percentage of the time, the whole building doesn't collapse properly. It's very hard to do. But no, they were just going to wire it, and just very quickly while 4 floors are on fire, and no big deal. They were just going to do this. So it had to be pre-wired. It's asinine to say they were looking at a controlled demolition if it wasn't preset. And then you have them putting out the story, it fell on its own before it fell. And when we first found the BBC video on a major news archive site and blew the story wide open here, it's covered in my film Terror Storm, the 2nd edition. It's chronicled in about 10 minutes of the 2-hour-plus film in that section on government-sponsored terror. It's Terror Storm, a history of government-sponsored terror. You should get that film at Infowars.com. Make copies. Give it to everyone you know. Because, see, they can't just kill Ventura. They can't just kill me. They can't claim we committed suicide. We're on record saying we're not because there's too many. The number 2 person in the Japanese government coming out and national news stories attacking him now. The guy under the president, the head of the Diet, their Congress, their speaker. You've got the former German head of intelligence and the former head of their Ministry of Defense saying inside job. You've got all these physicists and scientists and all these firefighters and police that have gone public. And you can't get us all. You kill one of us, it'll only make our information more prominent. And that's what they can't stand. That's why Larry Silverstein had thugs, and it's covered in Truth Rising, come up to Luke Radowski when they were having their weekly protest outside the New Building 7, and they said, we're going to say your backpack's a bomb, your camera's a gun. We know it isn't, but we're going to put you in prison for terrorism. They call the uniformed cops over, and the cops go, that's right, this camera's a gun. It's all on video. They would frame someone on video and say they're framing you. That's how corrupt his security goons are. And believe me, this mafia would just love to string Luke up, and they do call and death threat his family and his mother and him.